Her name is Patricia Walsh Chadwick. Not only did she have a very distinguished career on Wall Street, which is a fascinating one, but she's written a couple of books. This is the second one that I'm hearing about. It's called Breaking Glass: Tales from the Witch of Wall Street, and it continues her autobiography with a dose of really important, I think, career advice and altogether life advice as well. Patricia Chadwick, welcome to the Lisa Wexler Show today. Hello. Hi.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. So I'm reading about you. I confess I didn't read your previous memoir, Little Sister. I know it was a big seller, and it probably laid the foundation in terms of familiarity with people who are reading Breaking Glass. But can you give us a little bit of a bird's eye view of who you are and how you came to be for the first 17 years of your life, what your life was like?
Yes, of course. So Little Sister is a memoir that documents that first part of my life. And I was born into a religious community of highly educated people, and this was in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And this was like the late 1940s. And within a few years, that community had started to morph into something else. My parents and 11 other couples had a total of 39 children, and then there were 60 adults. And the place was run, in essence, by a Jesuit priest who had been excommunicated, Leonard Feeney, and a woman named Catherine Clark. And in this community, everybody was referred to as brother and sister, so she was Sister Catherine. My parents, whom everybody had known as Betsy Ann and Jim Walsh, became Sister Elizabeth Ann and Brother James Aloysius, and that was the way I had to address them.
You addressed your parents as brother and sister in that formal way?
And that's correct. After I was about 3 or 4, I never was allowed to call them Mom or Mommy or whatever we called them, and Daddy. And so when I was 6, and I was now the oldest of 5 children, and there were a total of 39 children in the community, when I was 6, the children were separated from their parents. And then the parents were forced to take vows of celibacy. So that really changed what was a conservative, admittedly, Catholic religious community into what really was becoming a cult. And when I was about 9 years old, we moved from Cambridge out to a little town called Harvard, Massachusetts, just west of Concord. And that's when we really became monastic. And Sister Catherine ruled with an iron hand. Little boys and little girls weren't allowed to talk to each other. We were called Little Sisters, so therefore the name of the title of the book, and the little boys were little brothers. We were schooled within our own environment. We were completely shut off from the outside world. There was no television. There was no radio. There were no newspapers. I never even held a dollar bill. I never went to a supermarket. I never went to a restaurant. And but we were schooled very classically, and around the time I was in my teenage years, there was a lawsuit brought against us by one of the dads who wanted to leave with his wife and his 5 children. And in that court case, which he won, basically he said that we were not being well educated. So that Sister Catherine realized that they better have some ammunition, and she had me apply to both Vassar and to Bates College, where my father had gone. I got into both schools, which therefore allowed the accreditation of this school, and so she was happy with that, but she wouldn't allow me to go to those colleges. When I was about 14 or so, I started getting interested in boys, but remember, we were completely segregated. I think Sister Catherine was hoping that if she didn't allow us to see or talk to each other, there would be no interest, which isn't really the way nature works. And so somewhere around that time, 14 and 15, I started being interested in boys, and she was very aware of it. We were all being bred to become the bride of Christ, which meant I would never have a family, which I didn't want at all. But Sister Catherine solved the problem for me and for herself by telling me that I had to leave the organization when I graduated from high school, which was when I was 17 years old. Oh. And there was no invitation to come back.
Oh, my.
And so there I was, a cultural infant. I knew absolutely nothing, having never spent any time with any of the media. I couldn't even tell you a single actor. I'd never seen a movie. I could never talk about sports or anything. And she allowed, as having forced me to say no to the 2 colleges where I was accepted, she allowed as how she would pay for me to go to secretarial school right out of high school, and then I was on my own, completely on my own, which I did. And with that degree that I got, and from the certificate that I got from the school, I got my first job as a receptionist at a brokerage firm. And Breaking Glass tells the story of that migration from being complete neophyte into entering the workforce and eventually the journey that I took, which was fortunately a wonderful one and a successful one, and for which, interestingly, I credit my upbringing in many ways to ultimately having a wonderful career on Wall Street.
So this is a lot to unpack. We're chatting with Patricia Walsh Chadwick, and the book is called Breaking Glass. And let me understand something. Is Sister Catherine, this huge, dominating, formative figure, was she your biological mother?
No, she was not.
She was not. Okay.
Sister Elizabeth Ann was mine.
Okay.
No, she was kind of the overseer. She was a generation older than all of the parents and adults there. She was born in 1900.
Did you, I mean, you must have, I imagine, had a lot of therapy in your life and a lot of soul searching. Do you feel that you were able to form loving attachments during this childhood?
Absolutely. And one of the reasons was that my father, in particular, broke the rules. And so while we were not supposed to talk to them at all, and you could get punished for talking to them, he was given, this was a very intellectual man who had a mathematics degree and majored in philosophy for graduate school. His role, his duty, and this is one of the reasons I really am convinced it turned into a cult, was to fix the cars. So Sister Catherine made sure that all those very intellectual people were doing something that would absolutely prevent them from continuing on in their life's work were they ever to leave. So my father would fix the cars, and that was right out in front of the main house. And so every time, and remember I was the oldest of his 5 children, if his head was under the hood of a car and he saw me coming, he would just raise his hand and just wiggle his little finger at me. That, for me, gave me so much joy.
Wow.
We didn't celebrate birthdays, but on my birthday, on his birthday and my birthday, each of us found a way to find each other and wish each other a happy birthday.
Oh, my
Those
God.
little things were the glue that held that relationship together. And
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, when they finally all left, the rest of my family, there were no hard feelings. I mean, I'm still puzzled as to why they could have been led to do that, but there was no animosity because I knew all along they loved me, and I blamed Sister Catherine for what was going on.
You just thought your parents were brainwashed, that they just were somehow brainwashed?
To this day, I suppose it's a kind of brainwashing. They really felt very strongly about the dogma of the Catholic Church. There was no salvation outside the Catholic Church, and were willing to sacrifice an awful lot for it.
Wow. Okay, we're chatting with Patricia Walsh Chadwick. So now you're in secretarial school, and what do you think equipped you? Was it manners? Was it restraint? Was it reading so many nonverbal cues that you were so acutely aware of in a world that didn't have a lot of talking? How do you think it was that you managed to do so well in that environment, in a business environment?
Well, it was a slow process. I tell a very funny story in the book about hearing all these words, and I had no idea what they meant. And I would look them up in the dictionary, and they wouldn't be in the dictionary. And so I thought, how am I ever going to know this word? Everybody keeps using this word. I hope it's okay to use on radio. And I finally found this really nice girl, and I knew she was Catholic. I knew she'd come from a nice family. She lived in Arlington, and I thought, I'm just going to ask her. And so one Friday, just as classes were getting out, I said to her, can you tell me something? She said, sure. She said, bubbly. And I said, what does, and I'm going to spell it just in case I shouldn't say it on radio, what does the word S-H-I-T mean?
Okay.
And she just looked at me, and she repeated the word back to me. And I said, that's it. I'm never going to ask another question in my whole life. I'm going to just figure out the hard way. So, I mean, it's a very funny story in one way, but it was where I was. By the time